Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connections Beyond the Couch, the Power of Struggle. I'm Kristen Staples. I'm the Executive Director here at the Wellness Connection, and I wanted to welcome everyone who has signed in to learn about this important topic today. We will be joined shortly by our panelists, Katie Nicely and Dan Savage. But I first wanted to just give you a few reminders. The first is that you will all be muted, but you will be able to put comments in the chat or ask questions in the Q&A, and we will be doing the Q&A at the very end of the program. Also, you will be receiving a recording of this in your email in the next few days. So no worry about taking notes or anything like that. You can just listen along and learn. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dan and Katie.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, well, first off, thank you everyone so much for being here. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the power of struggle, what it's like to be a parent, what it's like to struggle with some of the aches and pains of being a parent, and some of the trials and tribulations that it takes to raise our little ones, and for some of us who might be in the crowd, some of our big ones. So again, yes, my name is Dan Savage. I've been with the Wellness Connection now for about 4 years. I'm a licensed therapist in Virginia, and yeah, the Wellness Connection really feels like home at this point. I did my residency here and was lucky enough to kind of come on as a full-time therapist. And um, I work with, I'm going to talk about this at the end a little bit, but I do work with a younger demographic as well. My background is all over the place. I've been in the mental health field for 10 plus years, and I've worked in psychiatric hospitals to inpatient, um, outpatient therapy. I've been in the school system. And My previous job to this was the mental health coordinator for a early childhood education program in Loudoun County. So, I feel like when this topic came up, and I got to say, Katie is the brainchild behind all of this. She very much is, what was adamant about making sure that we spoke about this topic because it really is important. And I think it's something that with my background and Katie's background in the school system as well, me maybe coming from more of the clinical side, we're able to put our two heads together and hopefully provide as much information as you might be looking for, or as little. So as the presentation goes on, I'm going to try to weave in different aspects of my background to um, this topic here today. And again, I think for me, I mean, I've sat in a lot of these presentations, and um, I think I have every book on parenting that exists. So in my previous job, it's funny, in my previous job, I ran our parenting curriculum or classes for all of our parents who are part of our program, but I didn't have kids then. Now I have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month old, and now I'm like, I get it. I get why it's so hard. Before I was speaking hypothetically about if these situations happen to you, and now they're happening to me with my 2.5. Oh, actually, she's almost 3. My goodness. And I'm like, yeah, this is really hard to put this into practice. So we're gonna embrace that today. We're gonna embrace that struggle and the subjectivity of what it means to be a parent, in Loudoun County or wherever you're joining us from. And hopefully Katie and I can provide at least one little tidbit or words of wisdom that you're able to leave here with. So I'm excited to get into this, but I'll turn it over to Katie now.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Um, Apologies, I'm getting over a bad cold, so working through it. I'm Katie Nicely. I am an intern here at the Wellness Connection. Um, this has been a career change for me. I was a 7th and 8th grade history teacher for 23 years, the last 17 of which were here at an independent school in Northern Virginia. So needless to say, I come at this from both the perspective of a former teacher and now as a growing therapist. I'm currently finishing my master's through Wake Forest University here at the Wellness Connection. And so I also am the mom to 2 boys. I have a 9-year-old and an almost 12-year-old. And so again, there's yet another lens to which I think I can share something here. Um, Ultimately, I think this concept the word struggle is thrown around so much, and I feel it's oftentimes kind of misunderstood. And so that's kind of where we're going to hop up right into our presentation. So, like here, fail, it's not just a four-letter word. In our society, failure, change, stress, struggle, all of those words have really gotten a bad rap because the reality is that it's in those spaces where we grow. Um, are they uncomfortable? Absolutely. Do we like uncomfortable things? Of course not. Um, Yet you have to be willing to experience those things in order to take those next steps. As it says here, struggle isn't a sign that something is wrong, it's a sign that growth is happening. Stagnation is kind of the area that, while very comfortable and cozy, we're not growing. And that's the really important piece here. Um, Struggle and change, the idea of those really tend to constrain us instead of empower us. Those should be the areas where we are being empowered, even though it is uncomfortable. Growth is messy. Education is messy. Good gracious, is parenting messy? Um, and the messier in reality, the messier the better, because that means you're doing it right. Um, and it's not a one size fits all. It's not a paint by numbers. Um, but what Dan and I are really hoping to do here is kind of realign our thinking on what it means to be challenged, what it means to fail, what it means to struggle, and how those should not be the naughty words, how those should be actually the words to be celebrated uh, going forward. So prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. I think as adults, every day we are faced with challenges. And so ultimately, what we want to do is empower our children, whether students or our own children, or for Dan and I, our clients, um, give them the tools with which to meet that road and make it their road. Um, Making it smooth for them doesn't solve anything. They need to navigate. And that's really what this whole presentation is going to be focused upon.
I think I needed to hear that, Katie, especially last night at 3 a.m. when my daughter was trying to crawl into our bed and my 4-month-old son was screaming at the top of his lungs. I think I needed to hear that that is very much a part of the process. And that's what being a parent is all about, is embracing those moments, as difficult it is in the moment, just trying to take that deep breath myself and recognize that this is very much a part of uh, building some of those emotional muscles that are necessary to be a parent. And those moments make the future moments that are going to be difficult even easier. And there's this going off of what you said there, which I think flows nicely into this. As you see, the title of the slide is "The Journey is the Destination." And this is something, as a parent myself, I just try to live by and remind myself that I'm not working towards anything. And if you think about that as a parent, it's kind of a very scary but very true statement. I think, again, I'm very early on in my parenting journey of only doing it for about 3 years, but we're never done. They can be 3 years old or 10 years old or 30 years old or 40 years old. And hopefully I'm around to see my daughter at that age. And the being a parent and providing guidance and providing support, it doesn't, it just might look different along the way, but I'm always going to be doing that. So sometimes it's so important just to remind yourself that, again, in a very enlightening but almost defeating way, you're not working towards anything. You're doing it. You're already doing it right now by showing up, by being present, by working on yourself. Uh, and I think that word presence is so important to make to remind ourselves to be and to do the things that we need to do personally in order to be present in these moments. Because I think especially early on in the parenting journey, if you're somebody out there that has little ones like myself, sometimes you're just trying to get to the next day and the next day and the next day. You're just surviving. You're just kind of, just get, and then a month goes by and there's a saying that I might butcher here, but that I love. It's, the days the days are long, but their years are short. And I think that very much kind of applies to where I am, where I'm just like, last night I was getting emotional thinking about my daughter. I was just like, so many of the things that she's done with, and I'm like, I hope I'm doing a good job of just being present for these things and storing them in my mind and not constantly just like breakfast to lunch to nap time to the next time. So sometimes we need to stop and take a breath and um, get in touch with our different brain states. So this slide, again, coming from a little bit of the clinical side, I wanted to make sure that I provided um, a little bit of information of maybe what's going on our brains, what's going on our children's brains as they're struggling, as they're thriving, as we're struggling, as we're thriving. When I got into this field, into the mental health field, I think the first thing that really intrigued me was that question of why. Why do people do things and say things and act in certain ways? And what's the reasoning behind this? What's going on? And the majority, if not all of the time, there's a very physiological reason for that in the brain for how we react and how we respond. And again, how we just navigate life in general. And I wanted to understand that better. Now, we don't have time to get into the nitty gritty. I will later on a little bit talk more about how the brain interacts with itself, but I wanted to make sure that I at least outlined some of the different areas of the brain and what areas of the brain your child might be in, depending on how they're behaving and how they're acting and how they're presenting to you. Um, so the first thing that we have up here in the prefrontal cortex, which is the green area that you see on your screen, that's called the executive state. So that's where we hope, especially when our kids are in school, um, that's where we hope they are spending the majority of their time. When you're in this executive state, the brain goes, what can I learn from this? What can I get from this? What can I ingest and digest and remember and learn and take away from all of this? We call this relaxed but alert, essentially. We are in a perfect state of learning by being in this green state. Now, a lot of things need to happen for us to be active and involved in our prefrontal cortex and allow that part of our brain to light up if you were to see on an MRI. Um, with that, you're going to see the blue state and the red state. I'm going to skip the blue state really quick, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. In the red state, that is our flight or fight. That is our survival state. So if you are walking throughout the woods, or you're in the forest or whatever it might be, and a bear jumps in front of you, you don't want to be thinking in those moments. You don't want your executive state, the prefrontal cortex, to light up and go, huh, what should I do in this situation? Should I try to talk to the bear a little bit? Should I, maybe throw something? No, you either want to run or fight, or there's flight, fight, and freeze, and something that we have learned, in recent years, I guess, but it's been around for a little bit, where we truly freeze, which is a trauma response as well. We don't have time to get into that today, but freeze is very much a trauma response. But again, that brain stem here at the bottom is responsible for quick reactionary type of movements. Again, not a lot of thought process here, and a place that we don't hope our children spend a lot of time in, if any time. In essentially in this state, our kids are asking themselves, "Am I safe?" And you know, as scary as that can be, that is a question that comes up. Am I going to be okay? And sometimes that bleeds into the emotional concept of less of the physical, am I going to be okay, but more of the emotional, am I going to be okay? And that's why the stress response, the flight or fight, is not just about physical safety, but also very much about your emotional safety as well. Am I safe? Am I safe in this school? Am I safe at home? Am I safe when I go to my doctor's appointment, whatever it might be? And then leads us to our blue state. And I save this for last because, especially with toddlers, but even as kids grow up, this is the emotional state. So my daughter, 2.5, 3 years old, she spends a lot of her time in the emotional state. The forefront part of her brain is not developed yet. It's and won't be for a very long time. I wish it was. It's very backwards how human beings are. Like, we are so vulnerable. The younger we are, the more vulnerable we are. But it's those moments and those lessons that stick with us the most. I almost wish that didn't happen until we were like 8, until we were like, okay, I'm aware of the world a little bit more. But in this emotional state, the question that children and kids ask themselves is am I loved and am I connected? And that's one of the big questions that children will ask themselves when they're in a classroom or they're at home or whatever it might be, is do I feel connected to the people and the things around me, and am I cared for here? Do these people around me care for me, and are they going to protect me? So we spend a lot of our time going back and forth, and this is not a linear thing. We jump around between different states, but if we're in the survival state, it's very difficult to move from the survival state to the executive state. We usually have to go from the survival state to the emotional state to the executive state and pull ourselves out of that, so we have the ability to go, what can I learn from this? That's where we want our kids. What can I learn from this situation in front of me so that I don't feel overwhelmed by it? And again, all the time, my daughter, I know she's not saying it out loud, but I know all the time she's asking herself. Sorry, I feel like my daughter's the only one that makes me emotional. Dads out there, you know what that's like. She just comes out naturally now. I know all the time she's not saying it with her words, but she's asking herself, am I loved here? Are the people around me truly caring for me? And as a dad, I have to ask myself, what does that look like for me? How am I providing that safety for her? How am I providing that love and that care for her so that she knows that she is? And that's what this presentation is going to continue to be about, is about making sure that we're providing that for our kids, that they feel safe, that they feel loved, and that they know that they can learn things from their environment and from whatever we are teaching them. And as much as I sit my daughter down at 4 o'clock in the morning and I tell you cannot sleep in our bed, she doesn't get that because she feels safe there and she feels loved there. She may have slept in our bed for a little bit of time around 7 a.m. this morning. So this is a topic, the brain and the interactions with our developing children. This is a topic that you teach courses on, just college courses, high school classes on this type of stuff. It's just a small insight into kind of where our children might be, so that you as a parent can ask yourself, okay, in this situation, where is my child and how do I meet them where they are? And I'm going to talk about that as we get on in this presentation.
Awesome. And so to take what Dan was just talking about, and by the way, the fact that you say your 3-year-old exists in that emotional state, my oldest son just started middle school yesterday. And so therefore, you want to find another time of life where you exist in the emotional state. Holy cow. So just to give you hope for the future, Dan.
Thank you.
But to take those areas of the brain and kind of put it into kind of the learning space, okay? You have the comfort zone, the stretch zone, the panic zone. What's interesting to me is that the red zone on the brain, the visual you just had, is also the red zone here. That's the panic. That's when it is, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Okay. The reality is that we are always, whether adults, children, it doesn't matter, we are always taking things and recategorizing them. Things that were in the panic zone previously start to move to a stretch zone, and then they become a comfort zone. And that's actually what growth is. And so when faced with challenges, that's when you start building those connections between those areas that Dan was just describing. When I was actually looking this over last night, preparing for today, my younger son, who's 9, he just started 4th grade yesterday, came home from school after a summer of fun and great times. Obviously, going back to school is a big transition. And my 4th grader, he feels big. He always has. And he had an assignment, and he had the brown paper bag, and his teacher had stapled the directions to it, that he needed to put 5 things from our house into this bag that describe him. And after the full day at school, he was tapped out. Okay. Pretty much there was not going to be any stretch zone. He was going to be going straight from comfort zone to panic zone. If we attempted to tackle that assignment then, as evidenced by the fact that he pulled it out of his backpack and said, I don't know what to do. Mom, you got to help me. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The mom side of me was like, oh, I will help you. I will be the hero. Yay, me. But then thinking about actually this presentation, I was like, wait a second, Katie, step back. Hold on. Um, See, it's always a work in progress. And I realized that this was, especially starting the school year, I needed to be empowering versus enabling. And so therefore I said, hey, you know what? Let's just take a break. Why don't you go chill for a little while? Let's not worry about school stuff right now. You've had a lot of school today. So everybody went to their neutral spaces and he was up in his room. And I went up a little while later and I had the bag and I said, hey, you ready to start thinking about this? And he was like, I guess. Okay. So I sat down with him and we looked around his room. It's his room. It is filled with stuff that screams him. Um, and I said, well, okay, looking around here, is there anything that you see that kind of describes you? And he picked out a penguin. He's obsessed with penguins. And I said, okay, great. Good first start. Okay. But we were still very much in that comfort zone. Okay. Then he saw baseball. He plays a lot of baseball. I said, cool, great, fantastic. But we were still very much in that comfort zone, both physically in his room, but also very easy in terms of who he is. Penguins, baseball, that is who he is. Then all of a sudden we started to hit that stretch zone. And he was like, I don't know, I don't know. And that was that. I was like, okay, let's just take a step back. But again, that stretch is uncomfortable. Okay. Uncomfortable isn't bad. And that's what I really needed to reaffirm to him. So as we sat there, we kind of reverted back to a little bit of the comfort zone, dipped our toes back there. What is it about baseball that describes you? He told me. Okay, okay. Okay, so what do you think is a way that we could maybe find some other things? Dipping our toes back over to the stretch zone. Okay, well, maybe if we walk around the house. Okay, let's do that. So again, he stretched into the stretch zone. Was that going to be the next suggestion that I made? Yes. But I allowed him to make that suggestion. Okay. That's kind of in that way. I feel like sometimes editing ourselves as parents and the struggle that that can be kind of allows them to thrive. Stepping back as the parent and not solving and not fixing immediately, even though we really want to, because it's hard to watch them struggle. That's not what they need at that moment. Okay. Is it what they want? Yes. Is it what they need? No. So then we started to walk around the house and we picked out a couple other things. And we got down to that fifth thing. And he started to get emotional again. We had existed in the stretch for a little bit and he started to get emotional. Okay. So again, it's this constant push and pull. And like Dan was describing with the brain, we're always going back and forth. But the more we're going back and forth between those three areas, that's where we're building those pathways. So therefore, it's like we're building the highways. So therefore, it's not as difficult. Instead of just a one-lane road going from the prefrontal cortex to that emotional area, instead of a one-lane road, we're starting to build highways. So it can be that much more fluid. But we have to allow that frustration to get there. Ultimately, did we find our 5 things? Absolutely, we did. He felt good about it. He felt proud. We reflected back on it. Um, but the reality is that I had to allow him to sit in it for a little bit in order to have him forge the way forward. He needed to find that path. Okay. And I needed to be his support system as he forged that path. The Scientific American just this year released a study allowing children to fail in safe environments fosters confidence and resilience. Ultimately, what do we want for our children? We want our kids to be confident. Like Dan was saying, he wants his daughter to know, and his son, of course, but to know that she is loved and accepted and valued. Okay. And we want them to be resilient. The road isn't always going to be smooth. And so they need to find ways to bounce back, to stretch, sometimes panic, but then bring it back down. Okay. So going into that 5 items thing that my son had to do last night, he started out in the panic zone. We brought him back to the comfort zone. And suddenly, what was in the panic zone to start with moved over into the stretch zone, just with some support and providing some autonomy to him, making him feel like he was driving it. So, just to kind of put another layer onto what Dan was describing with the brain, here's kind of the psychology behind it.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah. And I think a big takeaway for me from that slide is the empowering versus, trying to remember what you said exactly, empowering versus um,
Enabling.
enabling. Yeah, is huge. And just being awareness. I think it's interesting being like a therapist in this setting, and then thinking about kind of like some of the things I do as a parent, and then some of the things I do as a therapist when I'm with my clients. And obviously, it's very different because I can feel, and especially working with a younger demographic, and I'll work with kids as young as 5 or 6, and then as old as 40 or 50 or whatever it might be. But um, allowing them to sit in those emotions, and like I can feel it. Yeah, by the way, this is the room that I do my thing in, that I'm in right now, and I can sometimes feel the parent me kick in. When I'm talking to one of my kids, and they're like, "Oh, they explain what they have going on," and I just want to dive in, and I just want to just tell them the answers or give them the answers, or this is what you need to be doing, or whatever it might be. And I'm mindful of, one, obviously not doing that. That's not what we do here in the therapeutic setting, because we sit with our emotions. We sit with how we're feeling. We sit with some of the stress and the difficulty of whatever it is we're struggling with. The name of this presentation, right? And embracing that struggle, embracing all the emotions that come with that struggle, and just allowing them to be there. And one thing as a parent, and something that you can just be mindful of then, and just almost like a response that you can utilize with some of your kids, is just, you're right, this is really hard. And allowing there to be silence after that. Naming the emotion, normalizing the emotion, and just letting it sit there. Not even telling them, okay, this is what you're experiencing and this is what we can do. Okay, let's go ahead and let's develop a plan, whatever. It's not time for that right now. I was working, I do a lot of family support, and I was working with a family just a couple days ago, and the mom I was working with, and something that I can resonate with, and I'm sure a lot of our parents out there, is she jumped into um, the protector mode immediately. She jumped into the savior mode immediately, all the time. And as much as we were doing some role play stuff, and as much as she wasn't even aware of how much she was jumping into that, I'm going to save my kids from what they're experiencing. And it's amazing how their kids didn't want that. They recognize, like, I want to sit with this. When we allow them to do that, and we allow them to truly express that emotion and be emotional and sit in that emotion, just like Katie says, it normalizes it, but as well it strengthens it. So the next time that it comes, we're aware of it and we know what to do. So as parents, recognize the importance of the pause, if I could say, the importance of the silence. That silence is so necessary after you name the emotion, just allowing both of you just to sit in that. You're right. This is stressful right now. You want to do really well, and I know that we're getting emotional, and this is really hard. And then just letting that all come down. So with this slide, I'm not too much on this, but I just felt it would be a disservice to not talk about anxiety when it came to being a parent and being a child growing up. Probably got to say 75%, 80% of maybe what walks in through my door is some sort of anxiety driven behavior or emotion or thought or whatever it might be. And what we do in here is we don't utilize anxiety as a crutch because anxiety is very much an umbrella term. And the last thing I want anyone to do is don't look up on the internet what to do with anxiety. What is anxiety? What happens when we have anxiety? It, anxiety is a subjective word in which you define yourself. And then when you realize we do that, we move away from the word anxiety and we deal with the symptoms of it. Because anxiety, I mean, I've said it now 10 times in the last 2 minutes, it means something different for every person that says it out loud. I am somebody who has struggled myself with that, and what to do with that and what it means, and especially socially, especially in these settings, and recognizing when it's healthy and when it's not. And you'll see here chronic stress versus stress, where a lot of the emotions that we experience come down to stress, where stress is good, uh, both as a child and as a parent. That's in to reiterate what Katie says, the struggle is good. Embracing the struggle is only making you stronger. But when does the stress become chronic, and when does it really start to kind of become unhealthy in our lives? And when does it really start to kind of take away from whatever it is we're trying to accomplish as a parent? The chronic and constant stress, because that is not sustainable. In therapy, in my room, sustainability is always a topic of conversation. What are you doing to help yourself, and what are you doing that's sustainable? Because every therapist should not just be thinking about their client as the 8-year-old if they're 8, but when they turn 12 and 20 and 30 and 50, how are we building a base and building a foundation in which you can grow upon? And that some of it is the recognition of what are you living in that's chronic, that's taking away from you developing healthy coping skills or whatever it might be. And our anxiety can very much become chronic. So the more that we develop positive coping skills, what's amazing about this is that the brain changes on a physical level. We can change the size of our brains by developing positive and healthy coping skills with the stress and anxiety that we experience on an everyday basis, both again as a parent and as a kid. And the more we stick to that, and it doesn't mean that if you don't stick to it every single day that you lost all of your progress or whatever it might be. The brain remembers, obviously, and the body remembers as well. So I think with this, it's just knowing that the strength in which and the positive coping skills that you create outweigh vastly to the stress you're experiencing, as long as we stick with them and as long as we sustain them and allow them to really adopt into our everyday lives. So it's not about the stress, it's not about the anxiety, it's not about the struggle, it's what we do with it. It's how we respond as parents. Your response is everything. So your child is struggling, they're anxious, they're worried, they're stressed, they're nervous, they're frustrated, they're embarrassed, they're all of these things. Those emotions are not just going to be here now, they're going to be here forever. But know that the response that you have to what they're experiencing, and usually allowing them to sit in those emotions that they're experiencing, how healthy that is for them, and how that in itself is a positive skill that you are developing yourself and developing for your child. For them to know, not no, we don't run away from these emotions. We don't just try to figure out quick twitch strategies and what to do with these, because and then the next time they show up we're going to do the same thing, and then we're just waiting for it becomes this revolving door of just trying to put out fires, and it sometimes it feels that way, like there's nothing I can do to end this cycle. The journey is the destination. Again, these things are going to continue. Your response is so much more important to your child than to what they're experiencing. And sometimes they just need you to be there and just to be, instead of create some sort of solution for them. So again, anxiety, another thing that could be, you could teach a class on, of course, and they do. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. What does it mean for your child? When you think about that header word anxiety, let's really break that down. Let's get away from that word and into the symptoms of that word, of what we're experiencing. How does this play out in our daily lives? And then let me be reflective as a parent make sure that I am in a supportive role, a listening role. And going back to that family that I was discussing earlier that I'm helping support, that was a big question I asked that mom is you have to wear different hats at different times. That's what's tough about being a parent. And you have to be mindful of maybe what role and what hat you have to wear at that time. Is your child in the I'm 15, I'm 16 revolting stage and I can do whatever I want and maybe I don't have to listen to the rules of the house? What is your role? What hat do you have to put on during that time? Is your child 7, 8, 9, and they're frustrated about their schoolwork and emotional and they don't know what to do with that? What hat are you putting on? What role do you need to have? Is it time to provide guidance? Is it time to support? Is it time to recognize? Is it time to sit back and sit in those emotions? Now, another thing about this, and it's so funny, like what I say to all my clients, if you needed suggestions, if you needed advice, you wouldn't be here. You can get advice from your parents. You can get advice from an uncle. You can get advice from a friend, from a boss, from a coworker, from anyone can give you advice. Go to Chat GPT, right? That seems to be solving everyone's problems nowadays. Not really. There is no Chat GPT for these things. There is building the emotional muscle that's necessary so that the next time it happens, we are comfortable with it. We fear the things that we're not comfortable with. All right. We fear the unknown, a lot of anxiety. The more we sit with the unknown and get away from that I'm going to save, that savior hat that we have as parents so many times, and getting away from that just listener hat that we need to have. Just this is just time for me just to listen and just to be here for them. And you continue to strengthen that muscle. And then those coping skills, and then your child starts to feel more and more comfortable with whatever they are experiencing and might be going through.
And I think segueing perfectly off of that is the question that I think every parent asks is, okay, so what do I do? And it was interesting as Dan was talking about that, and I had other things written down on my notes over here and all that. It immediately brought me back to 2 days ago, actually. My older son is starting middle school. And one of the most terrifying things about middle school is the lockers and the locker combination. Okay, I can do those, no sweat. So I took him to the locker move-in where you put your little shelf in and your little mirror and all this. Had his combination written down. And he sat there and he was doing it. Um, and he couldn't get it. And everything in me was like, let me show you. But then I was like, no, 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 no. Like again, it's editing ourselves. And I said, okay. So I tried to like encourage him and verbalize a little bit. Here's what you need to do. And at one point, I even caught myself like moving my hand over. And I was like, oh, no, stop, stop, stop. Um, and he got really frustrated with me. He's like, oh, you're so annoying, mom. But that was the frustration that he was experiencing. And could I have swept in to saved it? Yes. Okay. Did I like being called annoying? No. But in that moment, he needed an outlet for that frustration that he was feeling as he was growing. Growth is frustrating. And I needed to be confident enough to be able to sit in that and allow him to do what he needed to do. Later, as we were walking out of the school, he said, you know, I wasn't really mad at you, right, Mom? And I was like, I know, you're cool. You got it. You're good. You know? Um, but again, I think it's all about that, the healthy struggle, when to step in, when to step back. Um, Manageable frustration, persistence, problem solving. Um, that's the healthy struggle. Letting him sit there and fiddle with that stupid combination lock. That was a healthy struggle. I knew he could do it. He knew he could do it. We had all of the information we needed. It was going to work. Okay. But he needed to have that little bit of struggle. It's also like with procrastination. All of a sudden, it's 10 o'clock and your child says, oh my gosh, I have a presentation due tomorrow. When was this assigned? 3 weeks ago. Oh, okay. You've got a choice to make. Do you quick run out to Home Depot and get the trifold presentation thing and get out your markers and start doing it all? Or do you say, okay, how are you going to fix this? Is it easier to run out and get the trifold poster board? Yes. Would it create a lot more peace at home? Yes. What are you teaching your child? That you'll swoop in and save the day? In reality, if you, in that situation, if you say, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? How are you going to fix this? That's where the growth is going to happen. Okay. Because the reality is that they're going to learn much more from that struggle and potential quote failure, which is not failure. What is the worst that can happen? And I think that that's the question we often have to ask ourselves. What is the worst that's going to happen? Well, I'm going to get a bad grade on the presentation. Okay. How many other grades do you get this semester in this class? Is that going to tank your entire success? No. What is success? And I think that that's kind of the overarching question here is when you start labeling things as successful or as failure, that's where things start to get muddied. Um, can you learn a lot more from having to say, wow, I really messed up. I left this to the last minute. It's not going to be my best work. So I either have to talk to the teacher and ask for an extension and fall on the sword and say, I screwed up, or I have to be willing to take a late penalty, or I have to turn in something that's not my best work. Here's your options. Which are you going to choose? Again, putting them in the driver's seat, especially with older kids. Of course, with younger kids, it's a little different, but especially with older kids, letting them own it, letting them sit in it, and then ultimately letting them make that choice because then it's their choice. Then it's their success. And then there's the pride of, look, I figured it out, as opposed to, oh, I totally dropped the ball and look, mom did it. Mom saved it. The number of times I had students who would bring in work when I was a teacher, and I would look at it and I'd say, this isn't you. Well, my mom had to do it. Why? I forgot about it. Then all that child is realizing and learning is that they don't have to, and that they don't need to, and that whatever, easy come, easy go. And that's not the resilience that we need. Okay. Is it easy to watch them struggle? Of course not. When you look at harmful stress is extended over time. Okay. Harmful stress is tied to um, greater things, learning differences, things like that. Healthy struggle, momentary stress about that project that you put off or whatever. So it's really about deciding when to step in. And again, that's when we need to edit ourselves as parents. There's the research overparenting linked to decreased self-efficacy, increased anxiety, and poor emotional regulation. Sometimes it's important to, just like Dan was saying, to reflect it back on them, hold up the mirror to them. And this is something that you do in therapy as well. You're always holding up the mirror to your client and saying, what about you? Let's look at you. And I think that that's an incredibly important lesson is that instead of saying, here's how I would do it, ask, how are you going to do it? Or even, again, the wording needs to be intentional. Um, with this study from the whole idea of overparenting, I think that something that came into my mind with this is we have a lot of baseball in my house. Um, and there's like some of the kids that stand up at the plate and between every single pitch, instead of looking back at the pitcher or at their coach, they turn and they look at their parents in the stands because they're always looking for, was that right? They're looking for the affirmation. They're looking for all of these things because they need it externally because they don't have it internally yet. They're still building it. And so in that situation, it's okay, how do we get to the point where they don't always need to be looking back? They need to be able to, in that moment, between pitches, look and not need to be like, oh, what is mom telling me to do? They need to be confident in themselves and their skills. And it's like, okay, I know I need to get my elbow up. I need to choke up, I need to get closer to the plate, whatever it might be. They need to be equipped with those skills. And that's how we are able to do this, is by reframing our thinking as the parents, remembering that healthy struggle can be very good and positive. Um, Stress, fail is not the naughty word. Okay. And really allowing our children to sit, just like Dan was saying as well. So how do you decide when to step in? When you start seeing those greater impacts. Okay. Are tears or anger greater impacts? Those are the immediate, those are frustrations. Okay. It's when you start seeing kind of the next level.
I love it. I love it, Katie. Amazing. Something when you were talking, it reminded me of something really quick, and I'm going to be mindful of time here as it's 12:45, Katie, and we can be mindful as we move forward. We're probably going to go over that 1 o'clock, 12 to 1 o'clock. I'm just hoping that this doesn't end at 1 o'clock. Kristen, maybe you can make sure that that doesn't happen, or let us know that it won't, because we're definitely going to be going over. Something that I thought of while you were speaking, Katie, was I have this like little exercise, or I guess this little thing, when I'm doing some of my family sessions, for the child to accomplish. It's like this little riddle like game type of thing, and they have to figure it out so everything lines up and you get this ball out of it, whatever. And part of it is to kind of see, all right, and it's hard to do. And part of it is to kind of see, like, all right, well, what are the interactions going to be between usually my client, who's the younger girl or boy, and then between the parent. And not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, I was doing it, and the parent was jumping in, of like, come on, you can do this. Come on, keep going. You can do this. You can do this. Come on, you can do this. Just keep going. You can do this. And I eventually said, hold on 1 second. And I looked at the parent. I said, no, you can do this. And they're like, yeah, I know. I'm like, no, you can do this. Maybe they can't. Maybe that's okay. So as parents, right, there's this concept of like, I know we can do this. Okay, that's your belief, and that's amazing. But if he can't, that's okay too. And Katie used a huge word that I want to make sure you remember. Maybe he can't right now. Okay, it's not well, he can't do it. He can't right now. He's learning. He's he's in a place. Did you want to say something, Katie? You popped off your
Just
mute.
just the power of the word yet. I'm not there yet.
Yet. Yeah, exactly. And that was just me saying that almost put the parent at ease too. I was just like, no, no, no. Remember, you're able to do this. Okay. And they're like, yeah, let me just watch. What hat am I wearing? I got the observer hat on right now. And I'm just watching. And I don't need to save or be a part of this. Because the more that the parent interjected themselves, the more frustrating it was. It was like, let them sit, let them struggle. Like when my daughter was getting dressed this morning, I can do it, I can do it. I was like, we have to leave the house. Can't do it. But she could. And she did, kind of. All right. So this slide, I want to talk just briefly about the fact that change is possible, and that's proven. The chemistry of the brain, like I said before, can change. It can be different as long as we're persistent, and as long as we continue with the change that we're looking to do and that we're looking to see in the house, whether it is behaviorally, emotionally, or whatever it might be, with our children or with ourselves. Again, we have to put on our that mirror in front of our own face first, of what do we need, before what do our children need. When it comes to change, especially change that is very deep rooted, maybe you've been doing something for a long time that like, I got to do this differently, or I got to think about this another way, or whatever it might be. I want you to picture a football field, and I want you to picture 10 feet of snow all the way up on that football field. And I'm on one end, standing just behind the snow, and you're on the other end, standing just behind the snow. And I'm like, I'll use Katie, you as my representation. And I'm like, Katie, come on over. You're looking up at 10 feet of snow, and you're scratching and clawing, and snow is falling on you, and you're trying to move stuff out of your way, and you finally make it to the end, and you make it to me. And I'm like, you did it. Okay, go back. Katie is probably going to take that same path, right? She already developed a little bit of a path that went back, and she's going to walk back, and it's going to get a little bit easier, and she's still going to move stuff out of the way. And there's still going to be snow and whatever it might be. I'm like, good, you made it back over there. Now come back over here. And she's like, comes back over here, and she starts seeing the ground, and the snow kind of starts to separate. And I'm like, now go back. And I keep telling her to go back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, that pathway is going to be nothing. You're going to be able to see the turf. You're going to be able to see the ground. You're just going to be able to walk back and forth like it's nothing. It's going to be the easiest pathway back and forth. Now I'm going to say, Katie, for the last time, come back over here. Come back to me. She's going to walk to me. And it's going to take 30 seconds. It's not going to take 30 minutes or 30 hours anymore. When she's at me, I'm going to say, I want you to walk back, but I don't want you to go that way anymore. Katie's going to go, what are you talking about? This way is so easy. I've been doing it this way for days, weeks, years, whatever it might be. This is the easiest way to go back. I'm just going to go this way. I'm like, no. We have to start a new path. That path is not working anymore. When she starts that new path, not only is she going to be just frustrated that she has to do it, but she's not going to know how long now it's going to take to get to the other side. How long before I create that same path that I did before? How long until I know that I've made it? How long? But all of these questions are going to start, and it's going to be difficult. And she might get a quarter of the way and then come back and go like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't make this change. The brain is always going to go back to what it knows is easiest, always. The brain seeks patterns. The brain doesn't like change. It doesn't matter if it's bad for you. It doesn't matter if it's unhealthy for you. Some of the unhealthiest behaviors are some of the hardest to break because it's safe and easy and comfortable. We are potentially developing a new way of doing things, a new way of letting our kids sit in their struggle. For you, you're used to being the savior, used to holding their hand and being there and trying to save them, whatever it might be. We're doing stuff differently now. And just every time you think about this being difficult or whatever, again, whatever change you're trying to make, maybe it's not in relation to any of this, just recognize the challenge that you have ahead and how easy it would be going back. It would be to doing things the way you did before. That's why addiction, honestly, is so hard. And not just with substances, but with anything. Because those pathways in the brain have been established for so long. And that highway that Katie was talking about, those cars are just flying by. Those neurotransmitters, things like dopamine and serotonin, right? Cortisol, all of these things that are inside of our brain are just getting fired back and forth, back and forth. It's easy. We are creating a new way of doing things, and the brain and the body and the mind and the emotions and spirit doesn't like change. Well, your spirit might like change, but nothing else does. So with that, know that it is a difficult journey, and that's part of the brain, the hippocampus, that's responsible for memory and learning, is active during these moments, and it's responsible for autonomy, and it's responsible for self-confidence and so many of these other things. Storing those changes that you're engaging in those parts of your brain, and it is so healthy to challenge yourself, develop new ways of doing things, even though it is hard.
Well, and I love how we're segueing into each other, Dan. Like this is fantastic. And like
It's like we planned this.
oh my gosh, imagine that. This is one area where my previous career as a teacher, where I really see so many different examples. As a history teacher, I mean, history is kind of there. It's done. It happened. It's in a book. It's written down. It's a year, whatever. And one thing that I would always really push my students to do, I would never ask them what happened. I would ask, what do you think about what happened? And it would drive them nuts. And I always actually found that somewhat entertaining, because it would drive them nuts because they would be like, well, it happened. Yeah. What do you think about it? Well, what am I supposed to think? Well, I don't know. I'm not in your brain. And I think that that's the natural thing. Again, it's like that comfort state. You want things to be black and white. You want them to be right or you want them to be wrong. My students were always like, okay, so this happened. Is that right? Yes, that is right. What do you think about it? But again, it's that struggle to make it personal. And I think that again, that's where growth happens and that's where learning happens in reality, is when all of a sudden something means something to you. I used to have a student, or I had a student a number of years ago, and she was a perfectionist. She always had to have that 100%, 100%, 100%. And my class drove her nuts because she's like, all it's based on is my opinions. And I said, well, no, it's based upon how you are supporting your opinions. I said, you're using history to support what you're thinking and what your perspectives are. But she had to be comfortable within her own self in order to then share with me what her perspectives on whatever the historical situation was. And it really frustrated her because she said, I just want to be right. I want it to be easy. Well, life isn't easy. And I think that that's something where we really, that there's a lesson there that not so little of life is actually black and white. So much of it is gray. And we really need to help our children become more comfortable in that gray space because the gray space is where they find meaning and where they personalize it to themselves. And that's where the growth happens. So academic challenges teach perseverance. Yes. Um, you need to dig in, you need to tear stuff apart, um, and find out why, not just what. And really asking questions of our kids to help encourage that. Social conflicts. I taught middle school. I now have a middle schooler. That's weird. But social conflicts, that is middle school. I think we all think back to middle school as like, ooh, ugh. But social conflicts, that's again where we figure out where our personal values are, where our beliefs are, where our lines are. And again, is it easy to swoop in and say, "Oh, well, this person's not being nice to you. Here's what you should do." Yes, that's easy, but easy isn't growth. I feel like I keep coming back to that. Immediate rescue delays skill building. Um, would it have been easy to tell my student who wanted the right answer, just put this down, or to create a formula for writing a thesis-driven paragraph? Yeah, but instead she had to work through it, and she got to the point, and now she's a junior in high school. She now, like, and we're still in touch kind of sporadically, uh, where she's like, "You taught me how to actually think and think for myself." And it was like, "Oh, okay." Because again, it's getting in touch with who that individual is. And the more we can encourage that. Could I have been teaching what my thoughts were? Sure. But that's not what my job was. As a parent, should I be teaching my boys what my beliefs are? I could tell them what my beliefs are. But ultimately, it's for them to be deciding as life goes on what their beliefs are. And so it's about, again, that empowerment versus the enabling. I can enable by saying, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and that is that. One direction, black, white. There's no growth there, there's no individualization. Um, and ultimately, I think this is something that I got a lot of parent pushback randomly throughout my years in education because parents, again, they wanted to have those big tests. They wanted to say, my child got 100% on this test, but you're not asking them about the facts. You're making them use the facts, but you're not asking them about them. And that's something that with this study, positive parental attitudes toward, quote, failure enhance children's academic resilience. Parents wanted that 100% because they were being asked multiple choice or true and false questions. But again, if they said, hey, you know what? They want to know what you think. That's safe. But children are so often afraid to fail and let down their parents and, in reality, let down their teachers. They want to please, they want to be right. And we need to create safe spaces for them in the home, in the counseling space, in the classroom, for them to feel safe to fail. Because again, it is in that failure, it is in that struggle where true growth and meaningful growth, self driven growth, really takes root. And then that's where you start building your tools on top of.
Yeah, and with being mindful of time, because I do, and I want to be respectful to everyone who has come and joined and maybe has specific questions and can't, go much past an hour. So I'm going to be quick here, and Katie, maybe we can be quick to getting to maybe some of those Q&As. And in this slide here, really your main thing is just, and we've talked about this, which is good, is just recognizing the state that your child might be in and meeting them where they are, not where you want them to be. So a lot of the time as parents, right, we want them to be calm and relaxed and make decisions and all of whatever it might be. They might not be there yet. They might still be in that emotional state. God forbid they might still be in that survival state. Wherever they are, you have to meet them where they are. Okay? And not put the cart in front of the horse and say, like, no, come on, let's do this, let's do that. No. Come back to where they are. Come back to what's inside. All right. So recognizing the state that they're in is um, is a part of that journey of getting them to where you want them to be. All right. So again, in that executive state, like we've been saying, conflict is um, that's what we want. We look at conflict different. We see it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, like all of these things. And that's what we want their minds. That's where we want, especially when they're in school, right? Where a lot of this learning takes place, is we want them to be in a place where they see conflict or you know, feel struggle and then say, good, I'm glad that I'm experiencing this. Now, what can I do with this? Right. But they can't do that if they're in that emotional state, in that stress state. So we calm that first and we sit with that first, and then they're able to pull themselves out of it by normalizing some of those emotions.
And I think going along with what Dan just said, a big kind of phrase that I use, especially with emotions, is name it to tame it. If you can name that emotion, then if you can say, oh my gosh, I am so annoyed. Okay, you identified it, name it to tame it. Because the second you identify it, then you can start finding different ways to move forward. And a lot of times, if you can bring those words forward, then it starts to kind of bring the temperature down. Let's get you out of that highly emotional state. And so name it to tame it. Your role as the parent coach, get those get those words out there. Name it to tame it. Support from the sideline. Ask questions. Don't just swoop in to fix, okay? Empower. Like as a coach, they are there to give the pep talk, okay? During a game is not necessarily the time to be teaching the individual skills. That's over time. That's over practices. Okay. The game is when you can show those off. Okay. And where you learn where you need to go next. What skills do we need to work on in our next practice? Okay. So, really thinking about yourself as a coach and a parent. Again, as Dan keeps saying, kind of the different hats that we wear. I think it's really important to model the problem solving over fixing. If you just swoop in to fix, you're sending a message to your child that they can't do. Okay. Are you meaning to do that? Of course not. Your intentions are lovely, but you are sending them a message that you can't do this, so I'm just going to do it. Um, and over time, that sinks in. Again, your intention is not to send that message, but the impact is that message. And I think that that's one really important thing to keep in mind is that problem solving collaboratively versus just swooping in as the savior to fix, that collaborative problem solving is going to be filling their toolbox with so much that they can carry forward in school and in life, I think.
On this, the only thing I would want everyone to recognize is that something you already know, but I'll just reiterate, is that your child has their own thoughts, like Katie said before, thoughts, beliefs, ideas, mindset, and it doesn't need to always match up with yours. And that's okay. You might have certain principles you want your children to adopt. Of course, so do I and my children. Okay, like there are certain things that I am teaching when I have my teacher hat on and my coach hat on, depending on when that is. But I also have to recognize that not everything that I believe she's going to believe as well. And that's okay. And what are those things that she is going to create on her own? I'm not creating a mini me, in my daughter or my son. They are going to be their own people. And what does that mean to be your own person? Is to allow them to see the world with their own eyes and not through mine. And this little monocle thing, this little meme I have down here is like, this is truly how it feels sometimes. It's like you're trying to convince the other person that how they're seeing the world is incorrect. Oh no, it's actually this way. This is what this person actually meant to say, or this is how they were treating you. It's like, no, it's not. Maybe they were just having a bad day. No, they were trying to attack me, right? Like, how much do we feel that as people? We're checking out at the grocery store or something like that. Gosh, she was so rude to me. And it's like the other, how many times have I been with someone where they've been like, gosh, she was so rude to you. I'm like, really? Oh, I just thought that maybe, I don't know. I didn't recognize that. And they're like, you didn't notice that? I'm like, no. And they're like, well, she was. And I'm like, well, I don't think that she was. Well, she was, but I don't think that she was. So your perception of the situation is everything, so you can almost look at this in your own life as well, that your perception of what you see is your reality. And that's very much that is a line that's embedded in trauma as well, because trauma is not the event you experience, but how your body responds and how you respond as an individual to the event. So it's what happens inside you. It's the same reason why Katie and I might go down the street and we see a horrific car accident, and she goes home and she's fine, sleeps like a baby, and I can't sleep for 7 days. Right? She might be have the coping skills and the support system to work through those things, and I don't. So my perception of what happened is not what she saw. We did not see the same thing. And the same thing for your child. However they're going about life, how they see the world is going to be different from you. And that's okay. And meeting them where they are is important as well, and recognizing those times that you need to meet them where they are.
Absolutely. And I think one way that we can really work to meet them where they are and also get there ourselves, because I think as parents, you're always walking that line of where to, you're always trying to figure out the line. Like, what's too much? What's too little? Oh my gosh. Um, this whole webinar is about the idea of struggle and failure, okay, and the growth that can happen there. So in reality, what we need to do is we really need to reframe what that is. Failure is the teacher. Failure is not the enemy. Um, and so with your kids, define what success is, define what failure is. Create your own definitions. So therefore, it is not this big bad thing. Okay. One is what leads to the next. It is a place to start. We all start somewhere. I'm sure Dan with his little ones right now, it's like, I mean, I guess your littlest is not near walking yet, thank goodness. Thankful for you. But like it's you have to go through the scooting stage, you have to go through the crawling stage, the army crawl, and then the hanging on to things and the very first steps. Again, it is frustrating to watch at times, but again, you have to allow the process to unfold. And so therefore, by not immediately wanting to classify things as a success or a failure, just like I said earlier, things aren't that black and white. They have to fall in that gray space. Um, and really starting to communicate that and reinforce that to our kids is a really important thing. Because I think oftentimes what they see is like the big red F. And like, I mean, I think all of us like have a visceral reaction to a red pen, okay, because of those moments. And I think that we as a society need to work harder at reframing that. But I think that this is something that we can actually do quite easily with our own children. Um, so then they realize that it's a process. This is a stepping stone to the next thing. And by tripping over this stone, it's going to make me that much more ready to tackle the next one. So, um,
Katie, I love what you said about like my son, like, so he rolled over right for the first time not too long ago. And that is very much something that he needed to do on his own. Can you imagine if like he was laying there and I just kind of rolled him over? It's like, he did it. Look, everyone, he did it. It's like, you rolled him over. No, well, I helped a little bit, but he did it. It's like, he didn't do it and he doesn't know how. You did it for him. he will never learn. Well, goodness, hopefully eventually. But he would, if I continue to roll him over, roll him over, roll him over, it would take a long time for him to finally figure out, oh, I can probably just do this on my own. And it's fun. You sit there and it's amazing how when they're babies, right? We let them struggle and it's fun. It's like, hey, go, come on, you can do it. That same mindset, adopting that same mentality when you see your kids struggling at the age of 7 and 12 and 19 is so important. Because if you step in and roll them over, they're never going to be able to figure it out on their own. That's kind of like the theme of this is we keep coming back to is let them sit in that struggle because it's powerful, 100%. All right, I want to get to the Q&A. I'm going to let you guys just kind of read that last slide. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. But in this Q&A, I know we only have a few people here, but left with our presentation. But I want to make sure that we can expand on anything that we did discuss in specific, or you know, parents, please give us specific questions that you might have about yourself. You know, like I really like to say, the answer is usually in the room and doesn't have to come from us. You know, we're not experts in this category. We're just up here doing the speaking. So you all might be able to learn from each other so much more than you might be able to learn from us in whatever it might be. So if you have something specific that you want to ask or you want to know about something more in relation to something we already discussed, please, now is the time to do that.
Hey guys, just wanted to jump back in. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible presentation, and the main thing I've gotten out of it is that I did everything wrong. And hopefully my kids have learned their resilience. They're in now in their late.
There is no right and wrong. Remember that.
It's
I
not
think
black and white, gray.
I swooped in way too much. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys is when stress and anxiety is becoming chronic, like how do you define what is like in the moment versus chronic anxiety?
Yeah, so usually, you know, you need to look at how is this affecting the individual as a whole. So again, acute stress, stressed out for a test, stressed out for the first day of school, worried about a big game coming up or whatever it might be. Though that stress comes and it goes, you know. And if you're seeing that, like, oh, they're super stressed, and then the event comes, and then it's like, oh, you know, and it's gone, it's behind us. It's healthy, and that builds that muscle. You know, cortisol, which is the stress hormone, is actually a very healthy thing. But it's when cortisol is experienced with individuals who might have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder or an anxiety disorder or an adjustment disorder, whatever it might be, starts to become chronic and starts to affect our daily lives. So the question of, okay, well, when are we recognizing isn't, okay, when is it starting to really affect relationship with friends, family, my success at work or my success at school, my ability to take care of myself, my ability to interact with the world in a healthy way, you know, so just my daily functioning, am I getting up on time, am I eating all my meals, am I showering, am I bathing, just all of those things. That's when we start to see chronic stress really to start to affect our lives in those ways. And then if it is affecting our our lives in one of those ways where it's taking away from just the health and enjoyment of our life, well, then that becomes the question of that's an exhaustive answer. And again, not one that I would be able to sit here and say, hey, do this or do that, but the awareness of that, of like, okay, this stress, this anxiety, this whatever it might be that I'm experiencing is not coming and going. It's here. It feels like it's here to stay. And it feels like it's creeping into every part of my life. I can't even go to the grocery store without feeling like I'm trapped. You know, I mean, we hear that all of the time. So if those very daily, very habitual things that you have in your life are starting to feel really heavy and worrisome and chronic, then that's when we really need to do something about it. And that's when we need to have maybe a therapeutic setting or you need to reach out for help, because that's interacting with your daily life. And so when you start to notice that it's not coming and going, but it feels like it's here to stay.
Very good. We don't have any other open questions, but Katie, can you describe that group that you're about to start in October?
Yes. So actually the myself and the art therapist here at the Wellness Connection, we are starting a group beginning of October to help boys, specifically right now, just boys transitioning into middle school sorry, to start building confidence, social skills. It's going to be a 5-week group starting on, let's see, Wednesday nights, October 1st to the 29th. We're going to be focusing on managing stress, identifying, managing stress, kind of getting to know ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, developing coping skills, and also the social skills. We're going to be doing that by incorporating both group work and also art, different artistic endeavors. This does not mean that everybody's just going to be painting or something like that. There's going to be a lot of different media used. And so really trying to educate using real life examples to help our middle school boys transition into what the world of middle school looks like. We are intentionally doing it in October. So then kind of the honeymoon period of September has passed. And so if your son is struggling with that transition after kind of getting into the swing of things, this might be a great group for them. And you can just reach out to the Wellness Connection.
That's awesome. Thank you. Dan and Katie, thank you guys both so much for this incredible wealth of knowledge. It has taught me a lot. Maybe 20 years too late, but it's okay. I still have time. I can use it on myself, I guess, right? And give ourselves grace.
And you're still a parent.
I'm still a parent.
It never ends.
If you guys want to, do you guys have anything last minute things that you want to share that we have left out, or should we wrap it up here?
No, I think it's a good spot, and obviously I'm here with the Wellness Connection, and if anyone is looking to reach out for services or whatever it might be, if it's myself or somebody else, one of the big things we do is make sure that you have a good fit in the person that you're working with. So if it is me, amazing. If it's not, then we'll find you somebody.
Excellent.
Like Katie.
Like Katie. Yeah, one of the things I love about the Wellness Connection is how many kiddos we see, and especially having different modalities, not just talk therapy, but also play therapy and art therapy, which is often good for kiddos too. So please, if you're experiencing issues with your children, or if they're experiencing a lot of anxiety or stress or anything with back to school, please give us a call at 703-327-0335. And with that, I think we will sign off and say thanks to everyone who stayed all the way, and we appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.